So
Yeah.
I'm curious also to find out about that entrepreneurial um, way of your parents,
Mm,
because obviously they were hustling, but they also have um, deep knowledge about and confidence about starting their own business. And that's one of the things that, like, a lot of our people don't. I mean, we work in professions, but
mm.
don't necessarily go into starting your own business. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I mean, what the, about that process for your parents?
Oh gosh, I think it's, both of them. Looking at them both are both good leaders in terms of um, their own family dynamics. So my mum was the oldest. She wasn't the oldest child, but she was the oldest girl. So she was the second oldest, and my dad was the oldest in his family. So I think they both had a confidence level because where they were born leaders, I suppose, just because of by virtue of their birth, where how they were born. Because of that, they were given a lot more responsibility earlier, so they were able to, I guess, organize themselves or know a kind, mimic, pattern themselves off their parents before them. So my mom's parents, my grandfather, and my grandmother are really the business entrepreneur. Where my mom really takes off, because my grandparents, my mom's side of the family, they owned properties. They owned a lot of properties in Baguio, boarding houses and businesses. So I could see where my mom took that direct line. My dad, on the other hand, his family were educators. So his grandfather was a teacher. No, was a mayor of Sagada. His parents were teachers. His grandfather on his mother's side was also a community leader, like a strong community leader. So, my dad and my parents, so my mom and dad, they were, they had very good they took
Good
those
role models.
good role models to take them in. And then both of them, while they were both, so my dad was a police officer, my mom was a nurse. They good at following rules, they will follow the rules. But then there was both of them too are quite good risk takers, I think. So they took risks. My mom took a risk to come to the UK. My dad took a risk to follow her. My dad took a risk to start a business, without having had a business before. My mom, having had business in her life, she took a risk to take multiple loans. I mean, they have that element of risk taking. I think some people, I don't think it's specific to Igorot or anyone, but I mean, they'll stop there because they don't want to take that next step. But I think a lot of that risk taking is also grounded in their faith. So they're both very spiritual too. My dad's very spiritual, that he believes in
the old rituals.
Yeah. Both of them did. They were married through dawak, through prayers. They believed that all of that had bound them together, had created the good fortune for them both. That, despite, whatever challenges they've had, that dawak, those rituals, those prayers that were done at their wedding has kept them strong and kept them successful. They believe that.
And, one of the things when talking to my mother-in-law, that's really interesting, because I just asked her thoughts and about the Christian side of everything. And there is to them, there is no difference. So like their faith in terms of the rituals from our culture are totally compatible with the Christian faith, because it's all prayer. It's all prayer to God. And they feel like, hey, if we can do it through our own filter, our own culture, and at the same time do it through the larger picture of the Christian body, that there's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong.
There's nothing wrong with having a stronger power of prayer to support you in taking those risks, because you got to feel a little bit of that. You got to go with your gut, but at the same time, you got to have the faith to support it. If you have no faith foundation or anything in terms of it's not just being Christian, but some type of sense of prayer of this greater mystery of the universe, and bowing down to that in a sense, then how can you be humble enough to accept and receive the gifts that the universe can give you? So those things were a big deal to them.
Definitely.
And
growing up, we always did so before they did. You know, we always tried. You know, they brought us back to the Philippines. When we went back to the Philippines, they did massive rituals when we went back. Week-long rituals. The whole time we were there was always a ritual. They were doing some butchering
every time we go back,
cleansing,
ritual,
to do something, to give back, to give thanks, to do. Always connected. And here in the UK, whenever anyone was feeling sick, my dad would do a ritual. My dad would do a ritual when he had to do, you know, we had an exam, or he had to go to, you know,
even the naming of the babies. There's a baby naming rituals.
Every life cycle that we've experienced here in the UK, my dad never stopped doing the rituals.